Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for tuning in. So we've got Fred from Michigan here, and he's initially come on to the show asking how it is that the Bible could be dismissed as evidence for God. Matt's dealt with that, and he's also dealt with several other issues that Fred has successfully. And Fred has turned, or is going to turn to science. So let's hear what he's got to say.
Oh, because I have given some thought to that idea of like, why would he do this and then, kind of leave us to our own devices?
Sure.
And it was just one of those things, when you start looking into, say, quantum mechanics, there's an aspect of quantum mechanics.
Did you see there how Matt looked at Don when he heard the phrase quantum mechanics? Here we go again.
Known as superposition. And then when you begin to look at that, all particles, before you observe them, will be in any and all states that they can possibly be within given probabilities. Now, there's a fringe theory based on that called quantum consciousness. I heard somebody, I'm trying to remember his name now, Michio Kaku, I believe,
yes,
was talking about it. And
I'm familiar with that name. I don't know if this is what he was talking about, but go ahead.
Oh, okay, fair enough. And that got me thinking, okay, so if at the universal level, we can assume that anything that exists because we observed it.
Right, okay. I'm not aware of any theories which suggest that this is the case, that things only exist because they're being observed. I'm not aware of this. I'm not aware whether if this is a speculative, if this is like a sort of speculative conjecture. So I don't know if any of you guys know anything about this. I'd be really interested. I know that we had the double slit experiment. I don't know if it's got anything to do with that somehow particles, when they're being observed, are in a different state from when they're not being observed. But this theory this hypothesis that he's put forward, that things basically only exist when they're being observed, does that have any reality to it? Because it seems to me that if it doesn't, then it's pretty much irrelevant bringing it up, if it's just a speculative hypothesis.
Then could it simply be that the reason God only wants us to believe in him, like that's the sole reason for all of this, is because without that, he would cease to exist?
Right, let's just deal with that. So, God has created man, or God has created something to observe him in order that he can exist. So he didn't exist before he was being observed, right? That's the rationale. So if he didn't exist before he was being observed, how did this God manage to create anything if it didn't exist? So do you see what I mean? Doesn't really work, does it? Let me know what you think. This sounds to me like complete nonsense.
Sounds like a pretty weak God to me. It doesn't. It certainly doesn't match. It certainly doesn't match up with an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God. If we stop believing him and he goes away,
there's some science fiction stories with that as a premise.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just a bit surprised that Matt didn't challenge the scientific basis of that, because he came on and said, "Oh, I'd like to talk about quantum mechanics. I read somewhere, I'm not too sure how it was some Japanese guy, he's got a theory of consciousness. Yeah, I think it's that." And it all sounded very kind of murky to me and imprecise, highly speculative. And I don't know whether any of this has been confirmed or whether it's just, somebody basically who doesn't know anything and it's just has picked up some ideas from various YouTube videos or maybe from some popular science books, and is now trying to cobble together some kind of straw to grasp onto in order to maintain belief in God. Let me know what you guys think. Some of you, a lot of you have read around a lot more than I have on a lot of these conjectures and speculation. It sounds to me very speculative. and highly improbable, particularly to say that, isn't it? To say that God only created us because he needs us to observe him, otherwise he won't exist. It begs the question, how did God come into existence in the first place if there was nobody there to observe this God and bring this God into existence? It sounds like utter nonsense to me. And I'm surprised that Matt isn't calling it out, really.
Okay.
And on the quantum mechanics stuff, I'm not going to dig in because I have perceptions, and I have no expertise there, and I have perceptions that aren't consistent with that.
Yeah, well, fair enough. As some of you guys know, I've been reading Michael Dine's book on physics. I have to admit to you guys, when he starts talking about all the different types of particles, the way they behave, I've got to admit, it's probably relatively elementary stuff. I get completely lost when I try to reconstruct what he's talking about, and that's nowhere near quantum mechanics. I wouldn't have the arrogance to even make a single claim about quantum mechanics and frankly most of physics, because it's just so incredibly complicated. Obviously I know some fairly rudimentary things, but once they start going into all the different types of particles, neutrinos, for example, and how we know neutrinos exist, how we've managed to capture them, and how or rather detect them, and how we managed to study them, it's just mind-boggling. And I don't even pretend that I understand even a tiny amount. I wouldn't have the arrogance to phone in and use phrases like quantum mechanics, let alone some of the really speculative nonsense that he's engaged in here. And I'm just a little bit surprised that Matt didn't really challenge the substance of what he was saying, unless he heard the phrase quantum mechanics and he just simply switched off. So no, it's another instance of a theist who has been reading around and just trying to cobble something together to give himself a reason to believe in God when everything else has been shot down. And I'm sorry, but there's nothing in science that for me even remotely convinces me that God is any kind of explanation. It's better to keep searching for the real, proper explanations than invoke magic. Okay, that's all for now. Let me know what you think. I'll be back again soon. Bye for now.